On September 9th, 2019, I got on a plane from Melbourne Airport along with 38 other students from all over Victoria on its way to Bali and later to Yogyakarta. I would stay in Yogyakarta with these people for 6 weeks, in which time I experienced things that I will never forget. From visiting temples hundreds of years old to playing just as many games of Uno as a normal person would play in their entire life. Going to Indonesia was for me one of the most enjoyable and unforgettable experiences in my entire life, and I couldn't stress enough how much I would recommend anybody else to visit the amazing, culturally diverse place that is Indonesia. I'm making this video as a way to show people in Australia what it's like to visit Indonesia and what some of the differences are from everyday life in Indonesia compared to in Australia. Everybody had a shared feeling of relief as we finally arrived in Yogyakarta on the first day. The 10 hours of travel was finished and now it was time to make our way back to the hotel to relax for the rest of the day. We loaded onto the buses and started the drive from the airport. As we drove out of the airport, the first major difference from life back in Australia revealed itself to me. As our bus made its way towards our hotel, it became clear that heavy traffic was just a normality for people in Indonesia. I was amazed by the almost continuous flow of traffic on the other side of the road. Another thing that was odd for me was seeing so many motorbikes and scooters. The roads were full of them. After a couple of days, I also started to notice the lack of road rules that we are used to here in Australia. One thing I will never forget was watching people who would stand in the middle of the road in front of the oncoming cars and motorbikes, directing traffic to let bigger vehicles onto the road. The next major difference I encountered came from visiting my host school SMA for the first time. On this visit, we got to join in on a class with the Indonesian students. Along with some other students from Australia, we went with our Indonesian buddies and joined their German class. As I sat down and looked around the room, it became apparent that the students and teachers had a very different approach to schooling than in Australia. Most of the students were on their phones, and those who weren't were usually just talking and joking with their friends. As this was going on, the teachers didn't seem to care, just continuing to go on with the lesson like nothing was wrong. On several occasions, the teacher would start the class and then leave once they were finished explaining the work, leaving the students to do whatever they wanted. Despite all of this, however, I was amazed to see that the students always got their work done. My final discovery of how different life in Australia and Indonesia are came from the homestay portion of my trip. As the door of my host brother Akil's house opens, I'm not sure what to expect. I have no idea whether I'll be living in a tiny shack for the next 2 weeks or whether I'll be living in some sort of mansion. As I walk through the front door and look around, I'm pleasantly surprised. It's not particularly big, but it's no hut. There were definitely some things that I would have to get used to, like the fact that part of the house didn't have a roof. But overall, it was a house that anyone would be happy to live in. From my time in Indonesia, I found there were some things that most houses had in common. First of all, you will almost never see carpet. The most there will be is some rugs. Secondly, most houses have a section of the house that doesn't have a roof, that keeps the house ventilated, and is also an area that can be used to do things like dry clothes. And thirdly, often houses will not have a western toilet and shower, and will instead have a squat toilet and a mandi, which is either a bucket or a small basin of water that you use to wash yourself. In a lot of ways, life in Indonesia can be very similar to life in Australia, but there are also some things that can take a while to get used to and can be difficult to understand. To those who don't know if visiting Indonesia is something they would enjoy, I can tell you that visiting Indonesia was one of the most impactful and amazing experiences of my entire life, and has given me so many experiences that I will never forget, and has also opened up so many opportunities for my future that would never have been an option before. I'm so glad that I chose to apply for this program and would like to say thank you to all of the people who planned and made this experience possible. I would also like to thank all the teachers as well as Bonnie who looked after us while in Indonesia. And finally, I also want to thank all the other students who went on this journey with me and made it so enjoyable to be a part of.